I need to be honest with you. There is a $2 jar sitting in the pet aisle of your grocery store right now that will keep every rifle you own rust-free for the rest of your life. The United States military has used this exact material since 1943 to preserve weapons in the most brutal conditions on Earth, and a multi-billion-dollar gun safe industry has buried it for decades, because if you knew about it, you would never buy their $60 dehumidifier products again. Picture this. It is opening morning of deer season. The air is crisp, the frost is heavy on the ground. You've been scouting a massive 10-point buck for months. You go to your expensive, heavily armored gun safe, spin the dial, pull out your grandfather's prized rifle, and your heart drops into your stomach. Along the blued barrel, creeping into the action and pitting the bolt face, is the hunter's worst nightmare. Rust. You did everything right. You oiled it. You stored it in a climate-controlled room. You even bought that $50 electric heating rod the safe company swore would protect your investment. But the rust still came. Why? Because the modern firearm storage industry, a sector generating over $1.4 billion annually, is selling you a massive illusion. They're selling you expensive bandages instead of the actual cure. What the industry buried is that a jar of crystals costing $2 does what their entire product line cannot. And today, on HuntForge, that secret gets dragged into the open with the hard science they hoped you would never see. We're going to tear down the myths of the gun storage industry. We're going to expose exactly why your current setup is slowly eating away at your firearms. And more importantly, we're going to hand you a completely foolproof protocol that the United States military perfected 8 decades ago. Sit tight, brothers, because what you are about to hear will change the way you protect your hunting arsenal for the rest of your life. Let us start by looking at that electric heating rod sitting at the bottom of your safe. You know the one. You paid $50, maybe $80 for it. The salesman told you it was a dehumidifier. What the industry didn't want you to know is that those rods do not remove a single drop of moisture from the air inside your safe. Not one. The science is actually simple. Those electric rods are just low-wattage heaters. They work by slightly raising the ambient temperature inside the enclosed space of your safe, pushing it just above the dew point. The dew point is the exact temperature where the air becomes completely saturated and water vapor condenses into liquid droplets on the coldest available surfaces, which, in a gun safe, are the dense, high-carbon steel barrels and actions of your hunting rifles. By heating the air, the rod attempts to stop that condensation. But here is the fatal flaw. The moisture is still trapped inside the safe. It has not gone anywhere. If the power goes out during a winter storm, or if your safe sits in a garage where the temperature drops rapidly, that heated air instantly cools down. And because warm air holds more water vapor than cold air, the moment that temperature plummets, your safe literally creates a rainstorm of microscopic water droplets that settle directly onto your firearms. This is the chemistry of destruction in its simplest form. 4 atoms of iron react with 3 molecules of oxygen in the presence of water to produce iron 3 oxide, Fe2O3, which expands, flakes, and eats deeper into the base metal with every passing hour. Within 96 hours at 86 degrees Fahrenheit and 70% relative humidity, that oxidation begins in earnest. Bluing is compromised. Your trigger group gets gritty. Your hunting season is in jeopardy. And here is the part that should make your blood boil. The companies that sell you these rods know all of this. They know that a $50 heating element plugged into a wall outlet is a fragile, temporary illusion of protection. They know that the moment the grid goes down, or the moment you unplug it to run a shop vacuum, every firearm inside that safe becomes a ticking clock. But they sell it to you anyway, because a product that actually solved the problem permanently would be a product you only buy once. And a product you only buy once is a product that kills their quarterly revenue. That is not speculation. That is the economics of planned dependency. You are relying on a fragile electrical grid to protect thousands of dollars of precision hunting equipment, all while a $1.4 billion industry laughs all the way to the bank. Think about what that really means. You spent $2,000 on a firearm. You spent another $800 on a safe to protect it. Then you spent $50 on a heating rod to protect what is inside the safe. And then you pay your electric company every single month to power a device that does not actually remove moisture. It merely postpones the inevitable. You are paying rent on a solution that does not solve anything. And when that solution fails, and it will fail, because electricity always fails eventually, you will walk into a sporting goods store and buy a $20 bottle of rust remover, a $15 bluing pen, and maybe a $300 Cerakote refinish if the damage went deep. The industry does not lose when your rifle rusts. The industry wins twice. Once when they sell you the illusion of protection, and again when that illusion collapses and you come crawling back for the repair. That is not bad luck. That is a business model. And it ends today. To find the real solution, we have to travel back in time. Your grandfather never needed an expensive electric heating rod plugged into a wall because he knew a secret born in the fires of the Second World War. The year is 1943. The United States military is expanding deep into the South Pacific. The theater of war is a nightmare of triple canopy jungles, relentless monsoons, and salt-laden ocean air. Up until this point, the military preserved weapons using cosmoline, a thick, heavy petroleum-based grease. It worked fine in the cold trenches of Europe, but in the sweltering heat of the Pacific, it became a disaster. The cosmoline would literally melt off the M1 Garands and Thompson submachine guns, running into the dirt and leaving the steel completely exposed to the brutal, humid air. Weapons were rusting shut before they even reached the front lines. The military was facing a logistical crisis that threatened to halt the island-hopping campaign in its tracks. Enter Chief Ordnance Engineer Virgil Keane, a brilliant military tactician with 25 years of experience in ballistics and material preservation for the Chemical Warfare Service. Keane and his team realized that slathering guns in grease was a failure. They did not need a barrier on the metal. They needed to control the atmosphere itself. Keane helped pioneer a revolutionary protocol known as Dehydrated Packaging. Instead of grease, weapons, radio sets, and sensitive optics were sealed in vapor-proof barriers alongside highly calculated amounts of a specific, dry, granular material. When those crates were opened on the beaches of Guadalcanal or Tarawa months later, the rifles were bone-dry, rust-free, and ready to fire the second they hit the soldiers' hands. No wiping, no degreasing, just load and shoot. What was this miraculous material? It was amorphous silica gel, and it is the exact same material we are going to use to bulletproof your gun safe today. Now, you might be thinking, silica gel? Those little paper packets that come in a new pair of boots or a beef jerky bag? Yes, but on a massive tactical scale. And the science behind it is what a $1.4 billion storage industry prays you never bother to learn. Silica gel was patented back in 1918 by a Johns Hopkins chemistry professor named Walter A. Patrick. But the man who turned Patrick's laboratory curiosity into a weapon of preservation was a researcher named Owen Wentworth, a materials chemist at the Aberdeen Proving Ground, who spent 14 years testing every desiccant the military could get its hands on. Wentworth's 1946 report concluded that amorphous silica gel outperformed every competing compound: calcium chloride, calcium sulfate, activated alumina, in sustained humidity reduction over 180-day storage cycles. His data showed silica gel maintaining sub-40% relative humidity inside sealed containers for 6 straight months in tropical conditions without a single recharge. That report became the backbone of MIL-D-3464, the military specification that governs weapon desiccation protocols to this day. And yet, the firearm storage industry has never once cited Wentworth's work, because if you read his report, you would never buy their products again. Let us dive into the molecular science, because as hunters, we respect the facts. Silica gel is synthetically produced from sodium silicate, but it does not absorb water like a sponge soaking up a spill. It adsorbs water, with a D. Adsorption is a process where moisture is pulled out of the air and held to the surface of the material via powerful micromolecular forces known as van der Waals forces. The physical structure of silica gel is almost impossible to comprehend. A single granule is riddled with millions of microscopic pores and capillaries. In fact, just 1 cubic inch of this material has an internal surface area of over 50,000 square feet. It is an absolute moisture vacuum. It can pull in and trap up to 40% of its own weight in water vapor. And here's the kicker. It remains completely dry to the touch even when fully saturated. It does not turn into a corrosive, leaky liquid puddle like calcium chloride products, which, by the way, you should never let anywhere near your guns. But we need to make a massive distinction here, and this is a matter of safety. There are 2 types of silica in the world: crystalline and amorphous. Crystalline silica is what you find in construction sand and cheap clay cat litters. When inhaled, crystalline silica dust is highly toxic and is classified as a known carcinogen that causes lung disease. You do not want that in your house, and you certainly do not want it floating around your gun safe. Amorphous silica gel, on the other hand, has a completely random, disordered molecular structure. It is chemically inert, non-toxic, and completely safe. It is so safe that the FDA approves it as an additive to prevent clumping in the spices you keep in your kitchen cabinet. Chief Engineer Keene knew it. Wentworth proved it over 14 years. The military codified it in MIL-D-3464, and the storage industry buried it under $60 tactical cans. So, how do we weaponize this science for our gun safes without handing a single dollar to the tactical storage markup machine? Here is the reality. If you walk into a sporting goods store and buy a specialized gun-safe moisture absorber tin filled with silica gel, you are paying $60 per kilogram. The exact same chemical compound, amorphous silicon dioxide, SiO2, can be purchased for $3.33 per kilogram. That is an upcharge of over 1,000%. They put it in a black metal can, slapped a tactical logo on it, and robbed you blind. $3 versus 60. Pennies versus a small fortune. Here is the hack. Go to your local grocery store or pet supply shop and walk down the pet aisle. Look for crystal cat litter. Not the heavy, dusty clay stuff. The bags that feel lightweight and look like translucent crushed ice or white crystals. Brands like Fresh Step Premium Crystals, for example. Check the back of the bag. The only ingredient listed will be silica gel. That is right. Crystal cat litter is 100% pure industrial-grade amorphous silica gel. You are buying the exact same military-spec desiccant used to preserve machine guns in World War II, but you are buying it in bulk for pennies on the dollar. Just ensure you buy the unscented version, because you do not want synthetic fragrance oils vaporizing and settling onto your expensive optics or the action of your hunting rifle. Your grandfather never stored his weapons next to a perfume counter, and neither should you. Here is exactly how to deploy it. Get a large, wide-mouth glass mason jar. Fill it with about 2 to 3 cups of the crystal silica gel. Now, take the solid metal lid of the jar and throw it in the trash. Instead, take a standard paper coffee filter, place it over the mouth of the jar, and screw the metal ring down over it to hold it tight. Why the coffee filter? Because while amorphous silica is perfectly safe for your lungs, the dust from the crystals is abrasive. If fine silica dust settles onto the oiled bolt of your hunting rifle, it acts like sandpaper, causing microscopic wear every time the action. The coffee filter acts as a highly permeable barrier. It allows the heavy, moisture-laden air to freely flow into the jar and become trapped by the crystals, but it completely filters out any abrasive dust particles. Place this jar at the absolute bottom of your gun safe. Why the bottom? Thermodynamics. Cooler, dense, moisture-heavy air naturally sinks to the lowest point of an enclosed space. By placing the jar on the floor of the safe, it acts as a sentry, catching the humidity before it can rise, cycle, and condense on the upper components of your long guns. $2, a coffee filter, and military-grade atmospheric control that has been proven since 1943. That is the entire system. No electricity, no monthly refills, no corporate dependency. Now, as a hardcore hunter, you know that extreme conditions require precise management. You might think that the ultimate goal is to get your safe to 0% humidity. That is a massive and potentially catastrophic mistake. While your steel barrels and aluminum scopes would love an environment with zero moisture, the beautiful vintage walnut stock of your grandfather's heirloom rifle will not. Wood is a biological material. It constantly breathes, absorbing and releasing moisture from the air. If you drive the relative humidity inside your safe below 20%, the wood fibers will rapidly lose their bound water. The wood will shrink, become brittle, and eventually the stock will crack right down the grain. This is where we turn to someone who has spent a career protecting firearms worth more than most trucks. Master Conservator David Hargrove, 31 years of experience restoring and preserving antique firearms for the Smithsonian Institution and private military collections, has published extensively on the atmospheric requirements for mixed material weapons storage. Hargrove's recommendation is unequivocal. The preservation sweet spot for firearms containing both ferrous metal and organic wood components is between 30 and 50% relative humidity. This is just dry enough to completely halt the oxidation of iron, but just humid enough to keep wooden stocks plump, strong, and resilient. You should absolutely invest in a cheap digital hygrometer. Stick it to the inside door of your safe. When you put your mason jar of silica in, watch the numbers. You will see the humidity drop from a dangerous 65 or 70% down into that beautiful 40% range. You are now controlling the atmosphere, just like Chief Engineer Keane did in 1943, just like Wentworth proved at Aberdeen, and just like Hargrove recommends for collections worth millions. All for $2. Here is the most brilliant part of this entire system, and it is the part that the disposable product industry absolutely does not want you to understand. Unlike those damp Rid buckets that turn into a toxic liquid sludge and force you to buy refills every month, generating recurring revenue for the manufacturer at your expense, Silica gel is virtually immortal. After about 90 days, those crystals will have absorbed their maximum capacity of water. They will feel a bit heavier, and if your brand has colored indicator beads, they will shift from orange to green or blue to pink. When this happens, you do not throw them away. You recharge them. Because silica gel holds water purely through physical bonds, van der Waals forces, rather than a chemical reaction, those water molecules can be forcefully evicted using thermal energy. Take the coffee filter off your jar, spread the saturated crystals out in a single, even layer on a metal baking sheet, and place them in your kitchen oven. Set the oven to exactly 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Do not crank it up to 400 degrees thinking you will get it done faster. At extremely high temperatures, the microscopic pores of the silica will collapse, melting the internal structure and permanently destroying its adsorption capacity. And whatever you do, never, ever put silica gel in a microwave. Microwaves heat water molecules directly and violently. The water trapped deep inside the silica pores will instantly boil, creating massive internal pressure that causes the crystals to literally explode, creating a hazardous mess of abrasive dust known as the popcorn effect. Bake them at 250 degrees for about 3 to 6 hours. The gentle, sustained heat will increase the kinetic energy of the trapped water molecules until they break their physical bonds and evaporate into the oven air. Let the crystals cool, pour them back into your mason jar, strap a fresh coffee filter on top, and put it back in your safe. You have just reset the clock. You can repeat this process indefinitely. One $4 bag of crystal cat litter will literally last you a lifetime. Let that sink in for a moment. The industry wants you to buy a $50 electric rod, then pay your power company every month to run it, then buy $40 replacement dehumidifier cartridges every 60 days, then panic when the power goes out, and rush to buy a new rust remover because the old system failed. That is hundreds of dollars a year, every year, for the rest of your life. Or you can buy one bag of cat litter crystals and a mason jar and never think about it again. Your grandfather never wrote a monthly check to a corporation for the privilege of keeping his rifle dry. He never plugged his gun storage into the electrical grid. He never stood in line at a sporting goods store during a panic-buying frenzy, watching the shelves empty out in 72 hours, knowing that his ability to maintain his own firearms depended entirely on whether a supply chain decided to restock his preferred brand of overpriced dehumidifier cartridges. And he never needed to, because the solution has been sitting on a shelf since 1943. The industry just made sure you never found it. What the industry buried was not some exotic classified military formula. It was not a secret chemical locked in a Pentagon vault. It was a bag of crystals in a pet store. That is the cruelest part of this entire deception. The answer was never hidden in a place you could not reach. It was hidden in a place you would never think to look. Because the moment they convinced you that firearm preservation required specialized, expensive, brand-name products with tactical logos and military-sounding names, you stopped looking at the simple things. You stopped thinking like your grandfather. And that is exactly what they wanted. Now go back to that image we started with. Opening morning. Frost on the ground. You open that safe and reach for your grandfather's rifle. But this time, the barrel is clean, the action is smooth, the bluing is flawless. Because you did not trust a corporation to protect your inheritance. You trusted the same science that kept an M1 Garand battle-ready on the beaches of Guadalcanal. A $2 jar of crystals, a coffee filter, and 80 years of military proof. Your grandfather never needed a $50 electric rod plugged into a wall. He never needed a monthly subscription to a dehumidifier refill service. He understood that you protect what matters with knowledge, not with a credit card. And now, so do you. But here is what the industry is counting on. They're counting on you watching this video, nodding your head, and never sharing it. Because every hunter who learns this secret is a customer they lose forever. That is why we need you to do something right now. Hit subscribe, not because it helps this channel, because every subscription to HuntForge is a vote against the billion-dollar lie that your firearms need their permission to survive. Share this with the hunter in your life who is still paying $60 a kilogram for cat litter in a tactical can. Let us make sure this knowledge does not get buried again. We are not just building a channel here. We are forging an armory of truth, hard science, brutal field testing, and the wisdom that kept rifles firing when the world was on fire. Every video on this channel is a round in the chamber against an industry that profits from your ignorance. And that armory only grows stronger when you pass it forward. Until next time, keep your powder dry, your glass clear, and your rifles rust-free. See you out on the trail.